Now, I'm not gonna lie, when we had Hanyuu kind of like chained up and they were just showing her the flashbacks, I actually thought they were simply just gonna replay the Go scenes, but with like the crystallization effect over it for a majority of the episode. So I was getting flashbacks to last week, but thankfully it was like a fourth of the episode was pretty much exactly what we've seen before, with new alterations of characters experiencing it, mainly Hanyuu, but also watching Rika like getting the memories because of certain characters' reactions and her pain towards those deaths, to then build up to that finally the gun scene with 2 episodes left to go. And at this point, they got no more Go content left, so it has to be all new. But I will say, I was pretty disappointed last week. I still enjoyed it, but I was definitely more with the vocal side of things saying, like, I'm disappointed in Sotsu. So this episode was kind of like a return to form for me, because I've always said that the reason I like the retelling is because when you see it from a different character's perspective, it acts as something new, or it expands your already knowledge on the situations. So to have characters like Hanyuu, really, because, if you look back at Go, and just simply at Go's perspective, she kind of ups and disappears, and shit gets even worse. Hanyuu kind of seemed like a bitch. She kind of seemed like maybe, something was going on here that, we couldn't comprehend. So to get the clarification about what was happening and how much pain she was actually in, as the crazy witch is just laughing, I've already thought she was kind of evil in terms of like a visual design, but she gets progressively more psycho the more torture and time goes on. And to have an episode like this where, honestly, I was kind of surprised, like, it still didn't do what I exactly wanted last week, because, I've been hyping up the idea of, like, the 5 failed loops, like, maybe we'd actually get a lot of development towards those, especially that Keiichi loop. And they actually carried on that loop post-death, which was kind of interesting. It wasn't anything too crazy, but seeing our boy try to eat her brains and then the SWAT team comes in, Satoko just pops up and just is like, alright, I'm done with this. It was kind of nice to see that, I'm not gonna lie, and it did bring a smile to my face in a twisted way, that we did at the very least touch upon a bit more on my most anticipated loop that got no attention last week and barely any attention in Go, so that was nice. But to see the revelations throughout this episode and what was building up, like, we didn't need to see the dismemberment one more time with, honestly, if I'm remembering correctly, Go was less censored in the TV broadcast when Rika was kind of like getting her intestines like pulled out. But this time I feel like there was more. I just am going to chalk it up to either like, the person who approved it on TV last time wasn't the same one who approved it this time. But honestly, what is and isn't censored in Sotsu is hilarious, because I've said it before and I'll say it again. There has been far worse shit that hasn't been censored, and far tamer shit that has been censored, but that's what it is, I guess. At the very least, it was scenes we've already seen before, so it's not like, oh man, we gotta go seek out the uncensored. Like, we've probably already seen those if, you wanted to see that. But what I liked about this was really seeing just how helpless not only Rika was up until, like, she called her out on the bullshit, but also Hanyuu herself. Like, the idea of a miracle, it's great, it's something you want to root for, but when you're literally chained up and you can do absolutely nothing as you're watching loops. And it's interesting because I remember when, it started to be revealed that this is who's responsible, that the master manipulator is the one person who was always there for Rika. I think Hanyuu's reactions about that you can't stop doing this, like this is her best friend, she would always do what's best for her. That's the exact viewer reaction. And I feel like the viewers were as helpless as Hanyuu, chained up, being able to do nothing. And the idea of those memories flooding in, I think will be so interesting, because my theory is that next week will go about in a way of like, she'll get killed, and then Hanyuu will break free, confront Rika, they'll make a group plan, and then I imagine most likely Satoko will do the same with her counterpart. And then what do we do from there, right? Because we do have 2 episodes left to go. It's not like they have to conclude it next week, so there is time for that setup, that planning, probably the actual final loop. And it'll be interesting because I still imagine it'll go the direction of somehow, like, because there's a sea of fragments, there's probably a Satoko out there that's probably untainted, something like that they can give it another go around. But it'll be interesting to see, right? I do like, though, that in terms of, like, stylistically, when they were, like, setting up the scenes, because you do need to sometimes to reset up those scenes, even if we saw them in Go, to see what a character's looking at, because remove the recap, so to speak, and just looking at her reactions, we don't necessarily know what she's looking at. So a quick 1 to 2 minute to refresh us is perfectly fine. Though there was a couple of moments that I was getting a little worried that we're gonna have like 10 minutes straight of just go scenes, so it was a pleasant surprise that most of it was actually animated with new content. And I believe it was pointed out that it was like 15 or 16 minutes last week was just simply go scenes, so I mean, anything new is kind of a breath of fresh air for Sotsu at this point. I mean, it feels to me that the entire reason that there is this much recap in terms of, like, I'd say the last third of this anime is simply that it wasn't supposed to be 15 episodes, but maybe on a production committee side, they wanted more episodes, more time on the TV, more Blu-ray boxes that they could sell. I imagine that's the case, because you can definitely look at last week and this week and make that into a 30-minute episode, even a 25-minute episode, and have that be just non-stop banger content without needing as much recap of just literally taking the go scenes and putting them in what's now called Sotsu. So I'm going to assume that's what it is. I was hearing some rumblings about how the creator didn't want it to be like this. Not sure if that's true or not. I didn't get a chance to verify that because I'm not sure where people heard it. But it makes sense when you think about how it's being structured, especially compared to how Go was structured, right? So I imagine it was just a business thing. I wouldn't be shocked in the slightest if, honestly, Go and Sotsu were supposed to be one entry and it was going to be like a 3-core back-to-back, but then shit happened, had to get delayed. I don't know. But either way, this was a big step up for me anyway. I imagine it won't be a big step up for many because anytime there has been recap, there's been a lot of pushback. But for me, seeing the Hanyuu content, hell, getting a bit of Keiichi during his loop, even though it was post-death, it still was nice because that was like my most anticipated thing to kind of flesh out a bit more. And even though it was just him being psycho, I like that type of content myself. So really for me, this was a step up, but still not even close to the quality that I think Sotsu has laid out. But given how we're finally at that moment with 2 episodes, truthfully, I thought we were going to have 1 episode left with the direction last week took. So the fact that we have a couple episodes left, and you never know, more Higurashi anime down the line, a new project from this creator, you know, there's still possibilities, but I still stick with, I can see how they can end it in 2 episodes, should they not waste any more time, given that we're finally at this moment, though I will say I wish we would have got here last week rather than, you know, having a mixture of a pretty mediocre episode last week and a pretty solid episode this week. We could have had a great episode last week if we just combined and cut out the bullshit, but, you know, that's anime production for you. The upper management doesn't always make the best decisions, and, you know, the people trying their best are the one who get blamed when really they're putting their heart and soul into this type of stuff. I mean, I'd love to know everyone's thoughts on this episode. I had a pretty good variety of opinions last week, which was great. Honestly, I thought I was going to get talked shit about because anytime I throw any sort of criticism out there, apparently I'm too negative, and if I have positive things to say like I did in this episode, I'm too positive. So there's never going to be a way to please everyone, but I appreciate that people have been sticking by the Higurashi videos because, you know, it's definitely not as, I think, a minefield in the community as certain shows have been, like even My Hero Academia this past season. But I still think, you know, there's some pretty spicy opinions, and sometimes that spiciness can cause a lot of hostility in comment section. So I appreciate you guys being civil more often than not. So let me know your thoughts. What do you think is going to happen with episodes 14 and 15 before we wrap up Sotsu? Leave a like if you enjoy, and subscribe if you're new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.